This is the Past Lives Podcast, episode 70. I'm your host, Simon Bown. My mission here at the Past Lives Podcast is to investigate evidence that demonstrates survival of the human soul. We look at past life memories, near-death experiences, spirit communication, and other incredible phenomena. Now, in this episode, I am talking to Linda Deir about her book, Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. Hi, Linda. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast and giving us your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to this, Simon.
I read your book and it was fascinating. It's a kind of autobiography, isn't it? And to be honest with you, I found some of it quite disturbing, you know, the things that were happening with your mother. But could you give us an overview of the book to start off?
Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. And that's exactly what this is about. It's about when these guides showed up at the beginning of my life. And they showed up before my mom, at 20 months old. My mom almost killed me. Oh, my God. And before that, my life started out with the memory of the merry-go-round dream that I had for the first 35 years of my life. Imagine that, a dream that never changed, a dream I couldn't stop, a dream that happened every night, at least one time a night for 35 years. From that dream, it gave me a sense of myself. Now, we're talking before I'm 20 months old here, Simon. I come in with this dream. I come in with something that's massively important in this lifetime, which is what I learned from the dream throughout those 35 years and beyond. That there's no accident, especially when you have a dream like that, and that goes on and on. At 20 months old, my mom was not well mentally. My mom was angry and unhappy with her life. She felt trapped by the kids. She had three kids, and she felt trapped. She wanted her independence, and she just felt cheated in her life as I look back at it. And I was the only girl. And my mom she hated me from the beginning of my life. As you read through the book, you realize why she did and what she was protecting and, you know, why she was this way, although she was still not mentally okay to be this way. All right. I mean, something was wrong with her, but nobody ever stopped her. So at 20 months old, I had my had it day, same routine, wake up in the morning. My mom starts the screaming after my dad goes to work. And the screaming starts, and I know what's coming next, you know, the beatings. And I said, well, this one morning I figured out I had watched my dog push on the gate, you know, hit the gate on the side yard and get out. Eventually the latch would let go and he'd run outside, you know, outside from the backyard to the front yard. And I watched him do it and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go hit that gate enough times so that latch unlocks and I'm taking off. And I'm going to go find my daddy. So I take off just before the screaming starts. I know the routine, and I get outside of the backyard to the front yard, and off I go toward the expressway. For some reason, I felt like I knew where I could find my dad, and he would save me from her. All right. So off I went, barefoot, in diapers, the little baby snap-on shirt, and I was gone. And the police officers found me walking down the median of the expressway. And they stopped and picked me up, and they said, where are you going, little girl? And I said, I'm going to find my daddy. There's something wrong with my mommy. And they asked me to point out my way back, their way, to take me back home to the house, because in those days, Simon, there was no child protective services. This was 1954. And so their solution was stay out of the family business, bring her back to the house and, you know, make sure she got there safely and everything's all okay. That's the way it was done then. So they asked me to point them to my house and I wouldn't do it because I didn't want to go back there. So they took me to the candy store and bribed me with candy, right? And that's all it took for me to cooperate. So I pointed them back to my house, which wasn't too far away. And as soon as they opened the door, my mom had the most shocked look on her face. I don't even think she realized I was gone. And she was really thankful to the police officers for bringing me home and, making this scene about, oh, thank you, So as soon as they left and they felt like I was in good hands, my mom took me in the house and beat me into unconsciousness. When I woke up on the floor in a puddle of water. I didn't mention that part of it in Guided. In a puddle of water, I remembered this though. I guess my mom threw water on me to revive me and just walked away. Wow. When I woke up from that, I was terrified to find myself right back in the hell I tried to escape. So in that moment, I was completely out of options. I did the last thing I could think of, and that was I asked out loud for someone to help me. And when I did that, they showed up all around me, and they were real tall. They were like 7 feet tall, just a glow all around me, like 180-degree circle of them around me. And they looked down at me on all fours in that puddle of water, terrified. And they weren't concerned about me at all. They were calm as they looked at me, and they started to telepathically communicate with me and wash away the amnesia that I came in with. It was amazing. This experience happened in an instant, but it was so precise and it was so complete. It was so exact. It's like where we come from before we get here, and we have a limited capacity to imagine that we could have come from such an amazing place. This is what I realized. I realized who they were. I realized in that instant who I was. I'm only 20 months old. It's not a reasoning thing. It's a remembering, knowing thing. It's something you come in with. It's something you are. And they just kept sending me, calmly looking at me, present and focused on what they needed me to understand. And the big takeaway that day, it changed everything. And I'll never know how it changed everything because it was too early on in my life to compare it to what my life would have been had I not had this experience at 20 months old. So I don't know what that would have been, okay? I just know that from then on, I was definitely different. And I was different from every standpoint in my life, throughout my life, as I grew up and grew through my life. And the takeaway that day at 20 months old was, this life is not all there is, Linda. Knowing that, okay, there's one thing about hearing something like that, but there's the other part where you know it. It's in your DNA. You remember it. Of course that's true, okay? That's what I walked away with that day. And I could never be sucked into the fear like that again. It was impossible for me to be controlled by fear like that ever again. And I mean ever, throughout my life. There's nobody who could threaten me or throw anything at me that would make most people shudder. I didn't at all. I saw right through it. So in the instant that I had this first encounter with them, I saw things for what they were. I didn't take things personally anymore. It was a whole number of things that just made sense. It brought total clarity to my life. In part one, there's 4 parts to Guided. In part one of Guided, it's called Raised by Spirit Guides. Because I'll tell you, Simon, this was so intelligent. This was so precise. It was so loving, and it was so truthful that when I compared it to this life and I looked at what was going on in the world, in my little world, my family world, what I was born into, I just went, oh my God, please, this, I can't relate to this. family thing I was born into. I totally relate to the spirit family I came from, all right? And I just made a decision without even, it's not like you make the decision. It's like you just make it. It is a decision. It's a choice. You know more than you used to know before that happened. And it's just where you feel right, where you feel you belong, and that's where I came from. And from then on, I had this seriously strong, solid connection to these beings, these guides.
It sounds like it was a really spiritually transformative experience, as much as some people who have near-death experiences describe it.
What's interesting is one of the first things, and you're right about that, one of the first things that they told me in my day-to-day life outside of that moment, just a little bit later, maybe 3 years old, they started telling me this. They said, for you, life will get better as you get older if you can make it through childhood. So what they realized is that what they remembered, and maybe I didn't completely connect with, because once you're in this life, you're just here, you're living this life, and you're like, you're working it out. You're here to, if you had all this memory when you first came in, if you knew everything before you came in, what would be the point? It's kind of like a trick we play on ourselves, coming here, getting that amnesia, and trying to remember ourselves, and remember where we came from, what they told me. And when they told me that about life will get better for you as you get older, if you can make it through childhood, they knew I had a life front loaded with all kinds of karmic lessons. They knew that. Of course, I didn't remember that part of it, but they remembered it, the guides, those who followed me here into this lifetime to see me through this. By the way, everybody has this. Everybody. I'm not unique here.
Do you feel what happened to you was planned out before birth to teach you stuff, to be a lesson for this life?
Yeah, my guides made that very clear. They saw exactly what I signed up for, although I couldn't remember it. I couldn't remember the plan we made together, me, my spirit family, my guides, these beings. I couldn't remember what all that was, but here I come into this life, Simon. First thing, right off the bat, the merry-go-round dream, the karmic ride, that cycle all over again. Here you are again, Linda. The way I feel about it is I feel like I had done this so many times, reincarnated, come back again, that I was really sick of it. And I was determined to just front load my life. Let's get this thing done. I can take it on. I can survive it. I can thrive from it. I can become even more from it. I believe I can do that. One of the things in chapter 1 I talked about is I had that feeling that before I came here, that once I got here, I could do anything. I could do anything once I got here. I was so excited to be here. Now, I don't hear too many people talk like that about remembering something like that when they first come in, but I did. I remembered it. And I saw everyone around me, they were making this life hard when it wasn't supposed to be like that. I saw it for what it was. I came in awake, aware. But because of the time I was born into, I wouldn't dare mention any of this to anybody because I would have put myself in harm's way. My guides made it real clear to keep my guidance to myself early on. And I did. Simon, I didn't tell anybody about any of this until I published my book, Guided, when I was 62 years old.
And there's so much has happened to you throughout your life with the guides influencing you. Would you describe it as influencing you?
Oh, man, absolutely. They're my sidekicks. See, here's the key to guidance. You have to realize you're not crazy. I never thought I was crazy. In my whole life, I never thought I was crazy. Maybe because of the early, introduction I got about my life from the guides, from the other side. It was clear to me these things that I came in with. So I never thought I was crazy, but a lot of people do think they're crazy, think they're losing their minds. They see a psychiatrist and they ask for drugs to stop all this. You hear about that all the time. And there's nothing wrong with them. The life before and where they came from is bleeding through, and they're more awake than most people. There's nothing wrong with them. So what I did to compensate for that, I started journal writing when I was really young, like 7 years old, as soon as I could, because I had nobody to talk to about any of this, to assimilate this in me. And it wasn't that I thought I was crazy. It was that I really wanted to savor this. I wanted to understand what this was. I was guided to do that, Simon, you know. When you feel that move, that feeling that moves you that way, it's an intensity that takes you in a certain direction. That's always guidance. I want to say that to your listeners. It's always guidance, trying to point you true north to get you to move that way, because life is not supposed to be hard. Life is supposed to be fascinating. It's supposed to be amazing. It's supposed to be where you become more than you were before you got here.
And so for us normal people out here, you're saying that the guides can communicate with us by giving us a gut feeling of what we should be doing? And do they do other things like throw coincidences at us and synchronicities?
Simon, it's happening all the time. Here's one that your listeners will love. Your guides, when they try to reach you, your guides can only help you if you can be reached, okay? So in their attempt to reach you, you ask a question, you write it down, and you're waiting for the answer. But you have your mind, the human, the person, whoever it happens to be, they have their mind already made up about what they think the answer is, what the answer should be, what they want the answer to be. So what the guides do is they'll come in to get around your expectations. Expectations really get in our way about what's really going on. They come through with more questions, and they plant those questions into your mind. And then they bring through the answer. So you won't even say the question out loud. That's an instance where you don't even say the question out loud. You'll wonder even, where did that question come from? That came from guidance. They're approaching it, trying to reach you from a different angle. Because if you ask the question, and most definitely any question that doesn't start out with the word why is the only question that doesn't have an agenda. You don't have an outcome in mind when you ask a why question. Most questions are what, when, where, and how. And they look at it and they just go, well, I'm not going to get through to this person because they already have an outcome in mind. So that's why they go about it. They reverse things a lot of times. The guides will reverse things on you because it's the only way they can catch you off guard and catch you in the moment, present, where you really are. Because if we have an agenda, if we have an outcome in mind, then we're not present. We're focused on something in the future. We're focused on something in the past. We're not present. So when we're not present, we're not open. And so when they send the guidance through, you'll miss it every time.
And there's something you say in the book. You say they just know when to present you with exactly what you were ready to experience at just the right time. And you say that our job is to pay attention and even write things down.
That is right. Writing it down. You know, I just published my 4th book back in August. It's called My Guided Journey, and it's the companion journal to Guided. This came about from all the thousands of readers and listeners of Guided who kept asking me, how do I make this connection, Linda? I know I can. After listening or reading Guided, I got this thing, but I need you to help me with it. That's how this journal came about. It's how I learned to really understand and comprehend this higher intelligence that was always available to me. That's why I wrote this book. And now I'm live on Facebook every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, helping people who have my guided journey, help them take the journey so they can wake back up again.
So can I ask you about that picture on the cover of the book. How did that come about? Because it looks like it's one of the spirit guides and that it was moving. Was it moving, or was it a still image and it was just sitting there?
Well, here's what happened. It was 1994 at Christmas time, and I was at my daughter's house, and the kids were all running around and stuff, and I was taking pictures of the Christmas tree and all this stuff going on, and I turned around. Now, these were film days, 1994. I turned around, and there the spirit guide was, 7 feet tall, just brilliant. And to say that it was alive, it was totally alive. It was vibrant. It was palatable. It was speaking out. It was alive. I had my camera in my hand, and I clicked off the picture of the guide. It happened to be that I had my camera in hand. Hello?
A coincidence. Yeah.
And I took the picture, and I turned around, and I looked at everybody, and I said, "Did you guys see that?" And of course, they didn't see it, just like they've never seen it on all the times before that things have happened. So I didn't make any big deal out of it. I just kept it to myself. There I go again, Simon. I just kept it to myself. And I got back from the trip and got the film developed, and there it was. And I had a dream about 2 weeks later, and they came to me in a dream, and I was lucid in the dream. And I asked them, I said, "Why did you let me take your photograph this time, since I've seen you since I was a little girl?" They said, "You are going to write a best-selling book about your relationship with us since you were a little girl. And we appeared so the world could believe." Now, that was in 94. I started writing Guided in 2012, and it was published in 2014, 20 years later. And it is a bestseller.
Yeah, and it's an amazing photograph.
I don't even know what to say about this photograph, except that these are my guides. I call them my spirit guides, my angels. They're light beings. They're beautiful. They're powerful. They're tall. They communicate telepathically. They're always with me. I mean, to me, it's normal, Simon. I work with a lot of people. I do a lot of coaching and teaching as a result of writing Guided and the people who seek me out. And I really am so amazed that people have gotten through their lives so far without having any awareness of their connection to their guides. I can't imagine how I could have made it through my life. In fact, in the foreword of Guided, I even bring that up. I talk about how I wouldn't have made it without my guides, and I wouldn't have wanted to.
So there's something else in the book I wanted to ask you about, and I'll just read you this little bit that you put in there. It says, "When someone dies and exits in a shocking way, for their sake and yours, let go and don't perpetuate anyone's pain." It said, "In your case, sometimes the shock is so strong that you unknowingly prevent them from moving on, and it keeps you both frozen in time." So is there some kind of a connection there with somebody you're really close to, and when they die, somehow you're holding on to them and you shouldn't be?
Yeah, people don't know they're doing it, Simon. They don't know. I only learned it by living it. Chapter 15 of Guided. That's the chapter you're on. And that was the hardest chapter for me to work through. And boy, did I learn some lessons in that one. Oh, my God. And one of the lessons I learned was that tip that you read. And I learned it by living it. And I felt so terrible that I was so blocked for a couple of weeks where he couldn't move on. This person who died, he came back to me. He was very close to me. And he came back to me and materialized right in front of me 3 times in a row. He materialized 4 days after he died, and then he materialized another 3 days later, and he materialized another 4 days later, and kept asking me, "Please let me go. I'm in so much pain. Please let me go." My pain was holding him back, and I didn't know it. I was so self-involved with my own pain that I didn't realize what I was doing to him, who was already released from this body. He had already died. It happened in a real tragic way. My daughter was in the car with him. It was a head-on collision. The guilt that was going on in him was enormous. So that's another thing. When we exit this life, if we leave in some kind of traumatic way like that, or something where we could have hurt somebody, or maybe we did hurt somebody on our way out, that's a tremendous feeling that the person who died takes with them. It's horrible. It's regret at the deepest level. In fact, he felt so bad about this incident that I talk about before I even drove up on the accident. I was about 15 minutes behind this accident. Before I drove up on it, I was on the highway, and I could, my whole body melted down. My arms went limp. My legs went limp. I couldn't believe how shocking it felt to me. In the instant that I felt that, I knew they got in an accident, and I knew somebody died. It was horrible. It took everything I had to keep my composure, to drive to the exit, to get off the freeway, to continue going in the direction I knew they had headed. It took everything, and I kept telling myself, this can't be true. Please tell me this isn't happening. And I knew, and then came through the guidance that Mark died, and that Cindy's going to be okay. And I was like, oh my God, I tried to pretend it didn't happen. And this information just kept coming through. The truth. Your guides will always tell you the truth. Can you handle it? Of course you can handle it. You need to know. So that when I drove up on it, I wasn't so shocked. Who knows how I would have reacted, Simon, had I not had a heads up on this deal. So I drove up on the accident, and that's exactly what happened. Mark died. He was dead on impact. And although they tried to revive him and think he was going to be okay, he was brain dead. He was gone. And my daughter, as soon as I walked up to her, she was unconscious until I walked up to her, and then she became conscious. So I knew she was alive. So anybody who goes through something so traumatic, when they're the responsible party, this is how you can expect them to act. Now, how do you register all that? How do you connect with all that? How do you process that when you're right in the throes of this heightened emotional experience? What happened to me, and I can only explain this from my perspective, is I was in shock. And in the shock, I became accessible. The guides could reach me. Do you understand that?
I suppose it takes a barrier down if your whole emotional state has changed.
That's exactly right. It moves you out of that emotional charge and into a neutral place. I want to say that because every time that anybody needs to connect with their guides, especially under, enormous stress like what I just described, anytime that happens and you go into shock, boy, that's your opportunity to get clear on everything that's going on. It's that fear and it's that emotion that keeps us separate from that being present. I'm going to say that again. When you're in shock, you're totally present.
You said in the book that when you arrived at the accident, you went towards the car and there was some kind of invisible barrier that you couldn't get past.
I know. I tried. I tried. I walked up to it, and it was like I bounced off something that wasn't there. So I said, okay, something, whatever that is. I was in shock, remember. So I didn't really go into a lot of trouble of questioning things at that moment because I'm present, right? When you're in shock, you're present. So I tried to go around it, thinking if I made a 15-foot step to the right, step to the left to get around it, I could get around it to see Mark. And there was no way. That barrier was solid, and there was no way I could get through it. And the message I got was, attend to Cindy. To focus on Cindy. Just focus on Cindy. And that's what I did, Simon.
Yeah, I remember that from the book.
It's amazing. We're in good hands if we could just be present more often. Do we have to go into shock to be present? Please, if we can just bring ourselves into presence, the guidance is right there. There's no separation between you and your guides. It's that we create that separation when we get into fear, when we get into living in the past, living in the future, anything but present.
And so do you recommend that people meditate to try and get contact?
I wrote a blog post about that. I channeled it from my guides, and they described it differently than that. It's so interesting. They said that you don't need to meditate to make the connection. And I can't describe all the details of that post, but it's on my website. It's in the blog post. If somebody was just to put in the word meditation and search it, they could find that blog post about the difference between meditation and living a guided life. That's what the name of the blog is. They describe it differently. Meditation doesn't hurt anything, doesn't hurt a thing, but you don't need to do it. There's other ways to do it. I guess it's because it's how I do it. I live my life attending to the awareness that comes through in the moment that it comes through. Let me explain what that is. I attend to the awareness that just came through. Attend. I take action. I follow the guidance. It's like my yellow brick road. I wake up in the morning and I get on my computer and I check my email and I do whatever. And then all of a sudden, a thought comes into my head I wasn't even thinking about. A question comes into my head I didn't have. These things come through. This is guidance. It happens for everybody all the time. I let myself be present in that, and then I follow that. I follow it by whatever the urge is I feel, the urge. I follow that. I go to that website. I click on that, whatever it is that I attend to what just entered my awareness. I follow that. And Simon, it is the most amazing life. When you just let yourself go that way, there's so much more going on in our lives than had we planned it ourselves. It's getting out of your way and just letting the guides come through and help you on your journey here. Because we're the ones with the amnesia. The guides don't have the amnesia. They remember every single thing you plan to do this time around. And it's their job to see to it that you accomplish it. But you have free will.
And so when the guides communicate with you, do you ever hear them? And is it like there's somebody just standing in the room talking to you? Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll hear something and I'll say, what? And there was no one there. Okay. It's an unlimited telepathic communication technique. They are unlimited. However they can reach you. Most people at the beginning, they will reach them in their dreams. That's the first place that they'll try to reach you because you're out of your way. You're not consumed with your day-to-day life concerns, and the Indians call dreams little death. So you're out of the way. You're really off the planet. You're somewhere where you came from. You're more accessible. So they will start by coming through your dreams. Hence, Chapter 1, Part 1 of Guided, the merry-go-round dream. Even before I was 20 months old, I could remember that dream starting, giving me a framework around my life and why I'm here and who I am. So they will come through your dreams. And then once they start really connecting with you through your dreams and you start to feel this understanding, you start to remember who you are. You just have a feeling about it. People don't talk about it, do they? They don't talk about it. But they know something. They feel something. They're being awakened, but they're just not talking about it. Once they start realizing their dreams, and better yet, write those dreams down. Bring it into this world. You take it out of the ethers, and now it's alive in your world here. As you move through these things, then your receptivity to your guides begins to become broader. And they can reach you when you're driving your car, and there's that one-liner that just popped into your head. Where did that come from? That guidance, that direction, that what you needed to know about that situation now. It just popped into your head. And you'll say to yourself, well, I just had the most amazing idea come to me. It didn't come to you, it came through you.
And I wanted to ask you about your out-of-body experiences, and how did they start?
Oh man, when I look back on it, I talk about it, the out-of-body experiences, as I started doing them before kindergarten. Again, I want to say that there's two sides to this. I did an interview with a doctor a couple months ago, and she said, guided is a mix of spirituality and unexpected psychology. And she hit it right on the mark, because this is where I'm going to take this. In those out-of-body experiences, the psychology of it is I was trying to get out of here. I was trying to get out of that family home, that abusive situation. I was looking for another exit door, okay, another escape hatch, just like I did when I was 20 months old. I was still trying to get out of here, Simon, Okay, so the spirituality part of it, it started out where I would lay in bed on my back, and I had this little dart gun with the little spring-loaded dart gun that has the rubber end on it. The ceilings were smooth ceilings. So I'd lick the end of my dart gun. Do you remember doing this as a kid?
Yeah.
And I'd shoot the dart up at the ceiling. Eventually, it wouldn't take too long for the lick to dry. And the dart would fall back down on top of you. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We had that over here.
Anyway, I'd sit there and I'd have like 6 or 7 darts, and I'd try to shoot as many as up to the ceiling as I could before the first one started to fall. All right. So I was playing this little chase the dart game, and all of a sudden it came to my mind. Okay, it came to my mind. I'm sure this was implanted by my guides, taking me on a journey to experiment with this, okay? Before all the darts started falling back down, I went up and I started pulling them off the ceiling before they had a chance to fall back down on top of me. Now, what I did in doing that, I was going out of body to do that. And it was really fun. I mean, now I figured out how to get those darts from falling down on top of me, which really annoyed me. I hated it when that happened. So at one point, I turned around and I looked down at my body when I was up at the ceiling. And I went, what? It surprised me. I looked down at myself and I went, how can I be in 2 places? And the minute I questioned where I was, I slammed back in my body so hard that my head hurt. And then I went to sleep because I didn't feel good. And in my dream, as I went to sleep, my guides came through and said, okay, here's what you need to do. When you lick your darts and shoot them to the top and on the ceiling, and you go up and fetch him, just don't look back down. And then you can do this as many times as you want to. So that's what I did. And I learned I could look back down and I wouldn't slam back into my body because I wasn't surprised by it anymore. And I knew this was normal. Simon, I knew this was normal. Hello? To me, it was normal though, okay? I didn't question this stuff. I knew from that early connection I had with my guides at 20 months old, I had already gotten over a lot of stuff that would have blocked me from having this experience with them. So then what I was able to do, and I did it all the time, I went out of body on command whenever I wanted to. And I can even remember the feeling that I did to push myself out of my body, literally physically push myself out. And it came from my core. It came from my solar plexus. I would focus on my solar plexus and I would pop out of my body. And I could float, I could fly around all the ceilings. I even at one time, at one moment, at one experiment I had, where the family was watching Walt Disney. It was the big thing on Sundays in the 50s. And they were watching Walt Disney in the living room, and I was sitting in the back in one of the chairs. And I popped out of my body, and I watched everyone in the room watching TV as they walked by me, and they didn't notice anything different about me as I was out of my body, and my physical body was still sitting in that chair. And I just was amazed at how much fun this was, how nobody ever even noticed what I was doing.
And while you were out of your body in all of the out-of-body experiences you've had, have you ever come across other spirit beings?
No, I haven't. I've been on journeys. I'll tell you the most interesting situation, or I'd call it a segment that I experienced from the guides. They'd be teaching me to fly. Okay, now I already knew how to go out of my body and fly, but the easiest thing to do when you go out of your body is just to shoot right out of it. They taught me how to go out of my body, and I had these dreams night after night after week, where they taught me precision flying. They taught me when you go out of your body, hold your position, stand up straight, and hold yourself off the floor by about a foot. And I just hover there, about a foot off the floor. And then they say, okay, come back down to the floor, stand up. And then they say, okay, now go back up and go back up 9 inches off the floor and hold it. I got to tell you something. This was the hardest thing to do. I called it precision flying. That's what I called it in guided. And then I learned how to just hover off the floor, just an inch off the floor, and never touch the floor, and hold that position. Focus, presence, breathe, and just hold it. These guides have really worked with me to manage myself. I got to say that guided, I was never an author. I never wrote any books or any blogs or anything. And I sat down and I wrote this book in 4.5 months, Simon. What? It has something to do with this discipline, this ability. You may not think you have the ability. Your guides will show you and remind you who you are. And what stems off of that are things that you do that you didn't know that you could do brilliantly, and you do them.
Well, because you're a very successful businesswoman, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, how could I do these things, Simon? I never had any formal education for any of it. I mean, at 19 years old, when my guides told me, your marriage is not going to work out and you need to find your own way, 19. And they started pointing me in the direction to go. Because I had mastered this throughout my lifetime as a child to survive that childhood. Now those early years start paying off for me. What I learned, how I learned to move on something, how to listen, how to get out at the right time. It wasn't just about getting in. It was about getting out at the right time too. These guides are precise.
Because they advise you to sell your internet service provider business.
Yes. And they did the same thing with real estate. And I got in and got out at just the right time, got in and got out. We were the first internet service providers and host providers in northern Arizona on March 6th of 1995 when we brought it live. That was an amazing experience. But it's only because even my husband at the time, I go, we're going to do this. This is ours. We're moving on this. I know this is right. I feel this is right. I've had dreams about it. I've had sessions about it with the guides. And here's what he says to me. He goes, well, Linda, I don't want to work that hard. The reason I brought that up in your show is I want everyone to understand that as magical as this experience and this connection to your guides is, you came here to live your life. You came here to do the work. And a lot of people don't want to be bothered with that part of it, Simon. They want to imagine that it's just all going to land in their laps and it's going to be easy.
There was something else that I thought came out right out of left field, which was really odd, and I wasn't expecting you to say, is that you had a real close-up UFO sighting in 1972.
I know. Is there no end to this? I mean, you know what I think? And I'm going to answer that, Simon, but I got to hit this with an overview. Throughout my life, I've seen and experienced so many things that are off planet, okay? So many things that help me understand myself and point me in a direction that was stellar perfect. Okay. I could have never figured that out that brilliantly on my own. All right. So I just can't imagine how I know people have seen these things. I know, in fact, as a kid, I watched people, I saw things. In fact, I would project things right in front of them with my mind. I talk about that in the early part of Guided. I'd project it right in front of them. They would look at it. Then they would forget they saw it. I'd watch the blank look on their face. I guess if they can't imagine that it could be so, they can't see it. They can't see it if they can't have an open mind enough to be able to acknowledge it. So the UFO experience, that's the construction business. We went out to the job site and I always helped out in the morning. You know, we had like 30 carpenters. We had a lot of overhead. And I would help out in the morning, giving everyone direction and helping everyone along. And the dark sky, it was still not daylight. I get this telepathic communication. They had all the equipment out of the back of the truck, laid down in the back of the truck, because if you blink, you won't see us leave. I didn't even know who we were, who was talking to me, and they weren't even there yet, whoever they were. Okay, so see how sometimes they send you the information backward? Because they don't have a time constraint. They see things as happening all at the same time. All right. So that's another part of it, the human part, we have to get over. In order to receive this communication and this information and this intelligence, get out of your own linear mind. That's what I want to say. So I followed the advice. I laid down in the back of the truck. Of course, nobody noticed what I did. Because when they ask you to do something like this, they manage everyone around you so they won't interrupt you. The whole thing is orchestrated precisely as it needs to be. Not by you, but by this intelligence. All right. So I laid back in the back of the truck and I looked at the mountain in front of me and this craft comes blasting over me. It shows up really fast and it sits right over me. The outside is moving in one direction, spinning in one direction, and the inside circle area is spinning in the opposite direction. And I'm watching as they're communicating with me, right over me. And the carpenters you've seen that movie, what's the name of that movie? Where they're stunned by the UFO and they're all just standing there with their jaws open, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, they were all looking up with their jaws open, going, holy cow. And they're just like totally shocked as they're all looking up, including my husband at the time. They're all just looking up at it. This craft is just communicating with me. And then just before daybreak, the sun peaks over the mountain ridge. This UFO took off so fast that had I blinked my eyes, I would have missed them leaving. There you go. Okay. So the next day, Groundhog Day, same routine, out there, unloading the trucks, out the carpenters. Okay. I say to these carpenters, I go, do you guys remember what happened yesterday? And they all looked at me like, well, I should be able to remember something. Why can't I remember? It's like they paused for a minute, searching their memory. And they couldn't remember. Not even my ex-husband now, at that time, the husband, he couldn't remember. Nobody remembered any of it except for me.
There's a thing where you could say the paranormal sort of areas are all split up. There's people who are really interested in UFOs and they're not interested in spirit and reincarnation. And it goes back the other way. But we're finding that these two things do interact in some way. They're connected somehow. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's been my experience, Simon, from the beginning of my life. That's been my experience because these guides that I talk about, they're light beings. This is an intelligence that just vibrates with information and love. What they call themselves to me, what they've always called themselves is they are truth and love. Okay, I wanted to spend a moment on this. Everybody understands what love is because it's a connection we have from where we came from. We spend our whole life longing for this love that seems to continue to fail us. on the physical plane. We feel it in our soul. This love that's so everything. It's all encompassing. Okay. We miss where we came from, Simon. Truth, on the other hand, is something people have a lot of trouble with. They have a lot of trouble with the truth because the society, the human race, has spent too much time fooling itself, kidding itself, pretending its life away, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, hence the reason for reincarnation. We have to get this together. We have to be able to say, okay, there's the truth. What's wrong with the truth? Why is the truth so damning in this world? If truth and love are the same thing, why isn't love damning? But there's a real problem around the truth because people in the litigious world that we live in, God forbid, should you tell the truth, Simon? All right? There's a whole barrier around telling the truth or being truthful or just being honest or just telling what you saw, what you experienced, what you feel. It's not okay. And we have to get over that. There's a big barrier there in this world that keeps people from ascending, keeps people from breathing fully in this life. It keeps people scared. You know, it's fear that keeps us down, Simon. And this thing about handling the truth, you know, people can't handle the truth. You got to always dress it up and you got to nice it up. You got to make it into something else because they can't handle the truth. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real barrier in this world. We need to get over that. I learned this from my guides. I was able to see the truth. Here I grew up in this childhood situation that was forever tormenting me. I mean, imagine this. This is how bad it was. I've got to make this point, and then I'm going to go back to the truth. I wet the bed until I was 16 years old, Simon. Can you imagine that? Here's somebody that can do anything. I've been able to pull off miracles in my life. I could not stop doing that. That's how traumatic that childhood environment was to me. That's how bad it was. The first night I got out of that family home, I got married. I was pregnant on purpose. I didn't wind up pregnant. I did it on purpose so I could get out of there. First night I was out of that house, I was married and I was out of that house at 16, pregnant. I no longer had that problem anymore. That terrified me. I was like, oh my God, that situation was way worse than I thought. Because when you're in it, when you're going through something like that, you wouldn't dare look into your future and imagine a future like I was going to experience. An amazing future. Again, the guides told me from the beginning of my life, Linda, if you can get through childhood, your life will get better as you get older, if you can make it through childhood. So there it was. It was stars and stripes. It was right there. But until I could get out of it, could I start to breathe? Could I start to even, you know, what that was doing to me was horrendous. Okay, now the truth. I just had to make that statement because that's how horrible, that gives people a little glimpse into how traumatic that childhood was for me. I call it my childhood boot camp. What I learned from that childhood, not from the family I was born into, but the family that came with me, my guides. On the front cover of Guided, my guides. What they showed me and what they always sent my way was the truth. They always gave me the truth. I didn't always like it, Simon. It didn't always feel good. It hurt me, okay? It hurt my feelings. I didn't want the world to be like this. But it was the truth, all right? You hear the difference in my tone? It was the truth. And I could handle the truth. I saw everything for what it was. And what that kept me from doing, here's the beautiful part of it. It kept me from taking things personally. When you no longer take things personally, you can be present. In the middle of chaos, you can be present because you can handle the truth. This isn't pointed at you, even if they pointed at you. It's happening from them. They're the ones with the problem. They're the ones that are out of balance. You're not them. Why would you even think about taking on the guilt, the shame, the doubt, everything that goes with fear. Why would you even buy into it if you knew the difference?
Can you tell us about the talking board and how that came about?
This was interesting. It ties right into the merry-go-round dream, Simon. When I was 35 years old, I started taking dream classes because I still had this merry-go-round dream that was going on. I was 35 years old and I was still having this dream. I mean, do you think that I was being guided to finally go that way? Okay, so I had some time in my life finally. I had a little breathing room. I could fit it in. I started taking dream classes, and I was taking these dream classes for a couple of years. Amazing, Simon. I quit having the dream. I was moving in the direction the guides and I planned on moving me into. I finally went that way. So the dream was no longer necessary. That's what I realized from that. A couple years into taking the dream classes, my dream teacher invites me over to her house now for dinner, for a little, get together. And we were not chummy. On a personal level, I didn't like her. She didn't walk or talk. All right. So I couldn't really respect her, but I did respect her as a dream teacher. She was awesome. She knew what she was talking about. I knew that better than anybody in the class from what I had experienced in my life. So she has me over and she pulls out the Ouija board and she throws a piece of paper and a pen at me and she goes, start writing. Like they were just putting up with me, her and her channeling partner. They did it together. And so my guides came through and they started telling me what they wanted me to know, what they needed to tell me in December of 1988. And I wrote down everything. Of course, it's in the book. It's in Guided. I did put that in the book, what they told me. It turns out that their guides, they had been channeling in clandestine situations where they were privately doing this but didn't tell anybody, their guides asked them to bring me into a session like 2 weeks before. They said, yeah, I'll get around to it. And they finally invited me in because their guides told them, we asked you to bring Linda into a session. We need you to perform on this, and we need you to do this so much that we will no longer be coming through for you until you do perform on it. So that's the only reason they had me over, okay? What they told me is they needed a new talking board that did not cause fear and caution. They said they needed it as a higher way to reach humanity to help them through the challenging times to come. All right. And they said that they needed me to also have the right teaching tools for people to learn to do this the correct way. All right. It's always your free choice. I could have said, yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. That's how a lot of people treat their guidance, by the way. Well, maybe later, guidance has a shelf life. You got to act on it while it's still valid. And that's what I did. I said, okay, it's the only time my guides ever asked me for anything, this one time. So Simon, I was all in. I mean, these guides have been my life. I had it done and I had it completely produced by August of the following year. And that's how that came about. Ask the Universal Channel is the name of this talking board. It's really a small talking board, one that was optimized for the use with the pendulum as well as the planchette. Ray Holly and I have a secret group on Facebook that we have, 83 members, I think, in it now, of really, really excellent students who teach other students of Ask the Universal Channel how to use it throughout the week, all week long. So it's really a tight, small group, but it's a powerful group. And there's the lessons, there's the teaching. And we offer this talking board in the official size, which is what Ray and I use professionally with our clients in our sessions we do with people. We've got the printable one for people outside of the U.S. that want to get it. We can't ship the official board out of the U.S. because it gets stolen all the time, all right? So we have the paperback version, which is the same scale and size as the official version. And then we've got the online version, which you can use it on your phone, you can use it on your computer, anything. And the mouse becomes your speller.
It's kind of like the Ouija board, isn't it? Your guides direct you to the letters, is that right?
Yeah, it's based on the principles of dowsing. That's what the talking board is based on. It's just like if you used a pendulum, you know a pendulum is based on the principles of dowsing, right?
Yeah.
All the talking board is a format to use your pendulum with, or to use your planchette speller with, or your finger. You don't even need any of those things. You can just use your finger. And pretty soon you become just more intuitive, more accessible, more connected to that energy, more present, more focused. And then you can receive the guidance. And it is literally a conversation. Have you seen us in action?
Yeah, I've seen a video on YouTube.
Yeah, it comes through as fast as you could write.
Could you tell us about your books and where people can get them?
Yeah, they can get all of my books on Amazon. Just look up Linda Deir. That's Linda, Linda, Deir, D as in David, E-I-R, E before the I. I'd be the only Linda Deir on Amazon. And that's how you'll find all my books. Guided is my flagship book, and My Guided Journey is the companion journal to Guided, to help you make the connection. And then the other books that I have is My Journal Writing, which is a continuation of My Guided Journey, where you can log all the guidance coming through your dreams and everything. And I have to say this, Simon, the most important first step for people to take to learn to do this is to write these things down when they come through. Because you know how, I'm going to use this as an example. You know how you're in the shower and you get this great idea. You think it came from you, but it really came through you from guidance. And you step out of the shower and you forgot the darn guidance. How many times does that happen?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So you have to write it down. Eventually, what will happen, it's a matter, writing it down is the steps you take to become conscious.
So that what you're writing down is helping you link up with your guides, is that it?
Yeah, it's helping you document what they just sent you. Writing it down helps you become conscious. Now, conscious. Eventually, what will happen is you'll be in the shower one of these times. You've been writing it down for 6 months. You keep writing this down. You follow it. You do it every day. You do it every instance that you get a flash of guidance. A one-liner comes through, an epiphany, a thought, whatever. Don't question it. Write it down. Don't question it. You'll water it down if you question it if you mess around with it with your intellectual thinking. Okay. Write the thing down just like you connected with it, just like it came through. You'll look at it later, a day from now, a month from now. That's when you'll see what it is. But in the moment you have it, you'll see so little of it. Over time, as you follow this discipline and you continue to follow what I'm telling you to do, I'm talking to your viewers and you, what'll happen is the instant that you have the guidance come through, maybe 6 months from now, once you've really perfected writing it down, the instant it comes through, you will know what to do with the information. You will understand it so well, conscious. You are now conscious that you'll know what to do with it, and you will have the whole picture in an instant, in a flash, where you will not have that until you start writing it down, and then you have that aha moment, that realization in a week from now, in a month from now, when you look back at it and go, oh, now I see it. Oh, now the whole picture comes through. Okay, I see how I apply it. I see what I do with that now. I see what it really meant. What will happen from that practice, if you keep doing it all the time, in a short period of time, you'll get the whole picture in the instant it comes through. That's consciousness.
It's like a download.
It totally is. It totally is. But see, if you don't know what to do with it, Simon, you only got half the picture. See? That's why I wrote the journal. That's why I wrote the journal, My Guided Journey. It is so important. You got to write it down. How did I learn this? I started doing it at 7 years old. I had to start making sense of what was going on in my world. And there was no one in this world I would dare talk about it to. So I learned to do this by doing it.
And so do you have a website that people can look at?
Absolutely. It's lindadeir.com. That's again, Linda, Linda, D as in David, EIR.com.
Well, thank you for giving us your time and coming onto the podcast. It's been fascinating.
I loved it, Simon. Thank you for having me.
And that was a great interview with Linda Deir. If you're enjoying the podcast, why not leave a review? Also, I am on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to find me, the Twitter name is @SimonG.Bown. You can message me there or on Facebook, where you'll be very welcome to join the Past Lives Podcast Facebook group. And if you enjoy the podcast, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via your favourite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes. And thanks for listening.